The summer evening was warm. Kids chasing each other in yards while parents prepared for a quiet weekend. Angela Johnson was watering her roses when the sound of crunching tires tore through the peace. A black SUV with tinted windows rolled up the cul-de-sac, stopping just short of her driveway. Out stepped two men in dark uniforms, badges glinting on their belts. They walked with the swagger of authority, but something about them was off. Their uniforms didn't match, their boots scuffed, their badges cheap replicas that caught the sun wrong. One of them barked, "Ma'am, you're violating HOA regulations. We need to inspect your property." Angela frowned. "You're not HOA security. The HOA doesn't have cops." The taller man smirked. "Lady, we are the HOA cops. You don't want to make this hard." He pushed past her toward the porch. Angela stood her ground, lifting a hand to block him. "You're not coming into my house without my husband here." The man's smile vanished. In a flash, his hand whipped across her face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Angela stumbled back, clutching her cheek, eyes wide in disbelief. For a moment, the world froze. Neighbors peeked from windows, whispers spreading across the street. The second man sneered. "Cooperate or it'll get worse." They had no idea Marcus Johnson was inside. The door creaked open. Marcus stepped out, broad shoulders filling the doorway. He wore simple jeans and a t-shirt, but his presence commanded the air like a storm rolling in. His eyes locked on Angela's trembling hand pressed to her cheek, then shifted to the imposters. "Which one of you touched my wife?" The taller man scoffed, squaring up. "Who's asking?" Marcus's jaw clenched, but his voice was steady, deadly calm. "Her husband." The neighbors held their breath. They knew Marcus was quiet, respectful, the kind of man who waved at everyone in the mornings. What they didn't know was that he had spent 15 years as a Navy SEAL, carrying out missions most people couldn't imagine. And tonight, two pretenders had made the fatal mistake of waking that side of him. The imposter puffed his chest. "Step aside, sir. Your wife resisted inspection. She assaulted me. Now we're—" Marcus cut him off with a step forward, his eyes blazing. "You hit my wife." The silence before the storm thickened. Angela whispered, "Marcus, don't—" But the words fell flat. Because everyone could see it. The beast was awake. Marcus didn't rush. He walked forward with a steady, deliberate pace, the kind that made even seasoned fighters hesitate. Years of missions in deserts, jungles, and oceans had built a presence that couldn't be faked. The imposters only saw a civilian, but Marcus carried himself like a predator who had measured the room, the exits, and the heartbeat of every man in front of him. The one who slapped Angela shifted uneasily, though his mouth still worked. "Back up, sir, or you'll regret this." His partner tried to mirror his confidence, hand twitching on a cheap baton. Marcus stopped just inches away. His voice was soft, too soft. "You hit my wife. You made my daughter cry. And you're standing in front of my house with a fake badge." Then he moved. No one caught the transition. One moment, Marcus was still. The next, he had the taller man's wrist locked, twisted backward with such precision, the bones threatened to snap. The baton clattered to the ground. Marcus followed through with an elbow strike that cracked like dry wood. The imposter howled, collapsing. The second man panicked and swung wild. Marcus sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and slammed him onto the SUV hood. The windshield spiderwebbed with a violent crack. Marcus's hand pressed on the man's throat, just enough to remind him life was fragile in his grip. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus's voice was low, dangerous. "I've taken down men in the dark who never saw me coming. Men with training. Real training. And they didn't walk away." The thug whimpered, eyes wide. Marcus released him and turned to the first man, now on his knees clutching his broken arm. He crouched, locking eyes. "Tell your bosses this. Marcus Johnson doesn't play house games. You touch my family again, and you'll wish the cops were real." The men scrambled back into their SUV, tires screeching as they fled. Neighbors whispered, some in awe, some filming. Angela pressed her face into Marcus's chest, his arms strong around her. But Marcus's mind was already working. These men weren't random bullies. They were sent. And the HOA had just declared war. The next morning, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Word of the fight had spread like wildfire. Half the neighborhood showed up, phones buzzing with shaky videos of Marcus dismantling the fake enforcers. Karen, the HOA president, stormed into the clubhouse, red-faced with fury. "That man assaulted our officers. We need him fined, arrested, and removed from this community." She slapped a folder on the table, stuffed with fake citations against Marcus's family. But when the board turned to Marcus, who sat calmly at the far end, he didn't argue. He simply slid his own folder forward. Inside were property records, HOA bylaws, and most damning, the DMV, report proving the SUV wasn't owned by security, but registered to Karen's brother. "You didn't send officers," Marcus said evenly. "You sent thugs, and one of them hit my wife." Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's face drained of color. Marcus leaned forward, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of command. "I don't need your fines. I don't need your threats. I've fought in places where power isn't words on paper but what you can protect. And I will protect mine." Silence fell. Then Marcus dropped one more file, his military record, decorated with operations the board couldn't even pronounce. "You picked the wrong house." Neighbors in the crowd erupted in applause. Phones rose higher. The board members shrank in their seats. Karen sputtered, but her words drowned in the roar of a community no longer afraid. For the first time, the HOA saw who Marcus really was. Not just a homeowner, not just a husband, a Navy SEAL. The courtroom ruling was more than ink on paper. It was a thunderclap. The HOA, once feared and untouchable, was officially dissolved. Their accounts were frozen, their power stripped, their secrets laid bare for everyone to see. The fake HOA cops were marched out in cuffs, their badges confiscated like toys stolen from children. Karen herself, once the queen of smug superiority, sat pale and trembling as her brother's testimony tied her to the conspiracy. The empire she'd built on intimidation crumbled into dust. But for Marcus, victory wasn't about humiliation. It was about peace. That night, as the news spread like wildfire, the neighborhood transformed. Porch lights flickered on, not in suspicion, but in welcome. Families who had once cowered behind curtains now walked freely, carrying casseroles, grilled meats, and homemade pies. Children laughed and played in the street, chasing fireflies instead of hiding from patrolling SUVs. At the center of it all was Marcus. He didn't stand on a podium. He didn't give speeches. He simply shook hands, shared food, and listened. Neighbors who had avoided him for years now crowded close, gratitude spilling from their words. One father, tears in his eyes, gripped Marcus's shoulder. "We didn't know who you were," he admitted. "We judged the quiet man, but you saved us." Marcus's smile was small, humble, almost shy. "I'm no savior," he said softly. "I'm just a husband, a dad, a neighbor. That's all I ever wanted to be." Angela slipped her hand into his. The bruises on her cheek faded but not forgotten. She looked around at the sea of thankful faces, then back at her husband. "And now," she whispered, "they know better than to forget it." As if on cue, the night sky erupted with fireworks, not from Marcus, but from a nearby festival across town. Yet the timing was uncanny. Bursts of red, white, and blue painted the dark canvas above, and the crowd gasped in awe. Children pointed upward, their laughter blending with the crackle of light. Marcus wrapped an arm around Angela and their daughter, pulling them close. He breathed in the night air, finally free of tension, his muscles uncoiling from weeks of vigilance. The storm had passed. The HOA had tried to break him, to strip him of dignity and peace. Instead, they had awakened something they could never control. The resilience of a warrior, the loyalty of a husband, the unshakable strength of a SEAL. And as the final firework bloomed across the sky, Marcus knew the truth that would live in whispers and stories long after. The HOA thought they ruled the neighborhood, but they never realized. They had been standing on the seal's ground all along,